everyone, this is Lily, and in this video interview we're doing a process support video interview, and this goes out to everyone that has been walking process of writing self-forgiveness, self-corrective application for a while for themselves, that have actually practically walked it as themselves and faced actual real change within insights, understanding, realizations, direct seeing. And many will be able to relate to this, is that as one is walking one's writing and self-forgiveness, and especially through one's self-forgiveness, it's literally like veils peeling off of one's eyes as one starts seeing more and more and more about who we are, how we exist, why we exist, what exists. And however, as our process is still within the context of the mind consciousness system, and we have a tendency of existing within the time frame of the mind consciousness system, we have that tendency of projecting change, wherein we've, for example, walked a point within ourselves and our world, and we've come to a particular realization or understanding about that. And within that realization and understanding, we have then created a particular image about it or a future projection about it. Instead of taking that realization and understanding into practical living application for self immediately, the mind can still tend to come in and sweep up that realization and understanding and take it into a alternate reality dimension that self then keep as a self-reference for self in who self is, and then create a idea of self based on what one had seen and realized, instead of it actually being a physical walking self change that has been done through space-time application over a extended period of time. So first and foremost, if one has walked a point and one comes to a realization and understanding through one's writing and self-forgiveness, realize that in that moment that is all that it is. And if one do not take that realization understanding into immediate practical application, self-change living over space and time extended period, what will happen is one will miss the window of opportunity for actual physical real change, and the mind will take that opportunity for itself. Because that realization and understanding is self, it still remains within self. However, if self again take that moment and abdicate responsibility of taking it and actually living it, the mind will take it and function and exist as it for self, which what then happens is the mind takes it into ego. In ego, it creates an idea for self of that realization and understanding, and then what happens, one will have to go through and walk a total time loop as an idea of self, and one will face physical, actual events and experiences within one's world and one's reality that will keep on showing you that, hey, you are not that idea of yourself, until that idea eventually collapses and falls, and one falls within one's process, and essentially one has to start over again with that realization or insight point. So let us give a practical example of this scenario. Most people can, for example, within process, especially relate to spirituality, for example, where you have dabbled or even functioned or existed within spirituality for an extended period of time. And when it's come out of that whole system into reality in terms of starting to investigate self's own mind consciousness system and the world system, and start realizing what it is that self is in fact accepting and allowing, or accepted and allowed within that whole system. And for example, that one's whole spiritual personality was a belief of self, because when one started looking beyond that, one realized the nature of one's thoughts, one's backchat, internal conversations, reactions is nothing like that spiritual personality, and the world is in a state or condition that is in no way being affected or even influenced by anything spiritual. So one started seeing, realizing, and understanding this, and as one was writing one's writings and self-forgiveness, one saw more about how one created one's positive energy, experiences, and feelings, and one realized, but none of it has been real, and how one's belief within the light was totally created within oneself through actual images or pictures or visions, and one realized how everything within oneself was just created through thought manifestations. Now, if one take those realizations and one is, for example, still having contact with or within an environment with other spiritual people in their various contexts and manifestations, and one then, while one is still even in the beginning stages of one's process, or even have walked a while, and one is still only within the context of investigating self for self and finding out who self is, what self is doing, how self is living, and one then go to such people within one's community and simply make direct statements like light is not real, or what you're doing is unacceptable, or you know, it'll be like these straight, direct, immediate statements with no actual conversation, no context, no understanding, no substance, no considering that, yes, in terms of where those beings are in their process, they are stuck, enslaved, locked into their total mind consciousness system. But one is not considering that where they are within their process, in terms of one just coming with such statements, is not going to have any effect whatsoever, but to actually just create more unnecessary conflict and friction. I mean, you've got to remember your own process. You didn't come here in a decision to actually start walking and participating within one's process, within someone coming and attacking you with these one-liner statements with no context, no conversation, no consideration, and no regard. I mean, people that are still in their mind consciousness system is not bad. They're not like some evil in this world that you need to attack. I mean, they're still in their processes. We need to find a way for people to listen. We need to find a way or a point for people to hear. So, I mean, just place yourself in their position with someone coming to you with these statements, and you're totally within this mind consciousness system. Obviously, you're going to react and create conflict, because the mind is going to do its total defense and protection mechanism. Plus, whenever you come with such statements or points and people are just immediately reacting to you from the get-go, it's showing or indicating as a cross-reference for you that what you're speaking is knowledge and information. You have not even yet for yourself actually proven or lived a changed self within those realizations and understandings. And within that, doing such one-liner statements towards people is an indication of ego, where self has now utilized knowledge and information as realizations, understandings, and insights. And one has elevated oneself in this position within oneself and one's mind that because I know that the mind or light or spirituality is not real, I am more or superior, and thus have this power to now go and say what I want, how I want. This is not how it works. I mean, that is absolute point of separation, because you're not considering and regarding another human being as yourself in their individual process. So, process support and assistance within this context is to make sure that you do not take your own personal process, realizations and understandings that you start, or that start emerging within yourself through writing and self-forgiveness. And do not take it into ego and superiority in trying to exert knowledge and information on other people without actually being able to assist and support them with understanding, with context, with practicality, and what it is that you're saying. And this again brings us back to the point of being responsible for what it is that you speak and that you do. Because in terms of, and what we mean by that responsibility is where you can, with whatever you say to another, that is your self-responsibility. I mean, the effect your words have within yourself on others is your self-responsibility, because you're speaking it. It is you. So again, if one simply makes these one-liner statements, what one is also in fact doing is one is interacting with another human being in fear, because one make oneself think or believe that one can just give these one-liner statements and then one is relieved from all responsibility. That is not how it works. I mean, in terms of what we're even doing in Destiny, within interviews, within material, we're assisting and supporting each one within their individual process. When you come join us within Destiny, you're walking with us. It is a step-by-step process where we're explaining everything, giving context, giving perspective, showing, illustrating. It is a step-by-step process, and thus within that is our process, how we've walked, and so you assist and support yourself within your process as you walk. So realize that when you're sharing something with someone, it is your self-responsibility that that sharing is in fact you, and that whatever you share, you can assist and support the being to see, realize, and understand what you're saying. If they still react, even when your sharing is actual, contextualized, practical, where you are the living example, and it's not just knowledge and information you're sharing, but you're having an actual conversation, and they still react, then that point is the other being's responsibility within their own individual process. But with just coming on with one-line statements is ego growing into superiority, and is actually just causing more harm within another's process and your opportunity within self-realization than anything else. So make sure that when you explain something to someone or want to share something with someone, that it's not just knowledge and information, that it is done with understanding what you have walked for yourself practically. Like, for example, if you tell someone light is not real, just making that statement and leaving it and going into a heated, conflictual, energetic debate is not going to have any fruitful possibilities that can come up or emerge within self and the other. One will rather go through sharing with, for example, what was your process? I was doing this within spirituality, and I experienced this in my life, which brought me to this, and then I started seeing that, and within that, I realized light is not real. I mean, that's going into practical, actual self-sharing of a self-practical, physical, walked reality that has become for self. It's not just knowledge and information as one-liner statements. Okay, so here just to assist and support. So remember the context of your process, especially in the beginning as you walk it. It is for self. In terms of assisting and supporting others, one can really, in fact, only do that in terms of actually walking with someone through their process, if you've actually walked yourself with your process. So initially your process is just sharing, like, hey guys, this is what I realized today, and mainly doing it within the context of the forums, because that's where you're having beings that's walking with you. And if in terms of your spiritual community, for example, a point comes up where a being had a really bad day, for example, and you can say, hey, I can relate to that, I experienced the same thing, and you know what, this is what I did, this is how I walked through it, and this is what I realized. I mean, that's practical stuff. Rather than saying, hey, your energy is a mind system, or what you're experiencing is not real, or things like that, I mean, that's not going to assist and support anyone. So therefore, really first, have your process be for yourself. Share yourself within the forums. Be it a sharing, tell stories, make your process, what you're seeing, realizing, understanding a story. Through your stories and your sharing, others will come within their own pace in how they're walking their individual processes. And then, as they start looking and asking questions, then you can start assisting and supporting them, because they're opening the door. Only much later in your process, way into the future, when you understand the total context of words, of equality and oneness, can you speak one statement to a person? Can you have direct, immediate conversations with someone? But you can only obviously do that if you're really equal to and one with the being, where your statements will again be in context of the being's process and make them realize something with just a few words. So please, careful of that point within the mind consciousness system of taking knowledge and information into ego and superiority, making oneself more than others. This is not what it is about. This process is about assisting and supporting self to become a living example to assist and support others. We're in no way more than. Even in the beginning of one's process, it's just insights and realizations you're having. It's not really, in fact, changing you yet. You have to still walk those realizations and insights into your practical, living, physical change, where whatever you exist as the mind do not come up, do not exist. So you've got a long way to go. Keep your process practical, physical, space, time, breath by breath. And be attentive of the tendency of the mind to go into mind energy time, which is immediate projections of change when it hasn't in fact been walked physically, practically. Okay, thank you very much.